Welcome back to Trailblazing TV, and as they say, the third time's a charm. So this is my third time coming back in this afternoon. We had a little technical issue here, but hopefully it's all resolved. So I want to welcome those of you who are stopping by for the first time, and I encourage you, if you had an opportunity or have not had an opportunity, to take a look at the earlier segment from today, which is called The Power of Passion, or excuse me, The Power of Purpose. That's what it was, The Power of Purpose. Hey Blaine, nice to have you here. The Power of Purpose this morning, I was talking about the why. Why is having purpose, why is having passion important to everything that you do? And what I'm going to talk about this afternoon, or on this segment, is something called practicing for performance. So let me kind of set the backstory here. Some of you may know that part of what I did in school is I grew up as a music performance major, and I also had, on one hand, that's the real artsy creative side. On the other hand, I grew up in a very sports-focused family and sports-focused environment. Now, for those of you, hi Joyce, hi Ed, nice to have you here. For many of my friends that I grew up with, they'll be the first to tell you that I was not the most wanted kid on all the sports teams. I didn't run well. I had a lot of health issues that we didn't understand why the underlying cause was there. So I was usually the kid that was picked last if it involved any kind of running or any kind of agility. So I became, hi Kim, nice to have you here. I became very good at being a goalie at hockey, yay. I did fall in love though with aerobics and working out and doing weightlifting, and I still do a lot of that today. I love riding a bike. Things on wheels are great for me, and as a bipedal person, my walking and hiking is my norm. However, that being said, I did have a sport, and it's not a sport that most people excel in. However, it was also due to the nature I grew up in, and that was my parents owned bowling alleys. So when other kids were out playing basketball, baseball, other kind of, cool kid kind of sports in some areas, I was bowling. And where I grew up, actually, bowling was also kind of a very cool thing, and it still is. So here's why I'm giving you a music creative platform, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about sports. Because you as a leader, right, you are being called into leadership, or your leadership is being called forward more. You're living a life, whether it is in business, it's personal, as a parent, whatever the role is that you're playing. The people that I align with the most are leaders in one way, shape, form, or another. So I call it this mantle of leadership sits upon us. And when our leadership mantle sits here, there are times when we are asked to step up to the plate, and, for sports, you're up at bat. Or when you're at music, you step up to the stage, to the microphone, and it's time to perform. So there's a couple of things that I want to drill into here that relate to the elements that the most successful people do. Hey Kate, welcome. That the most successful people do when it comes time to quote unquote perform. So I want you to think for a moment, what is a task at hand, or what is an action that you've been asked to lead, handle, get through, get done? There's something that you have to do. You have to apply your skill set in that moment to perform, okay? So many people go into life, they go into their business, they go into personal family things without a game plan. And that's not bad all the time. I love spontaneity. In fact, my earlier life, before I was married and children, I was very spontaneous, and I still do try to be spontaneous. However, there is a benefit to having a plan, but to execute the details of a plan with perfection, or so that it's as good as can be, behind the scenes, at some point, somebody or many people need to perform, and it could be you. So in some of the details in prepping, practicing for performance, the best of the best of the best, and all they do, never start out that way. We're all born at the beginning with the same blank slate, and life gives us circumstances and opportunities that we get to grow in. We get to, sometimes we stumble and fall, we get to recover, we get to learn, and then we move on. So when you decide that there's an area of your life, personally or professionally, that you want to excel in, understanding a couple of key concepts and more importantly, strategies in practicing for performance can propel you forward. So I'll share with you one side of where I learned a concept. And then I'm going to give you two different levels of explanation of how I applied it. And I may tie it in with the third one to kind of give you different perspectives that you can use to integrate into your life. So if you're tracking with me, give me a little thumbs up on this. I hope this is a benefit to you. So early on, I've also shared many times that the first thing that I wanted to do was to dance. So music, I love music. I love music of all types. It still is probably one of my deepest passions, whether I'm listening to it, dancing it, writing it, playing it, singing, performing, whatever. So I remember it was around kindergarten, about 5 years old is when I knew I wanted to be a dancer. But where I ended up really honing in that music was a part of my soul, it was a part of my essence and always would be, I was about a freshman in high school. I had to make some really difficult decisions because, see, I had been practicing for quite some time. I started to play saxophone in about, I think it was the end of 4th grade, beginning of 5th, and I was going into my freshman year. I was good, but there was a point where one of the advanced musical concepts wasn't quite clicking in my brain as easily as some of the others, and I felt frustrated. In fact, I felt very frustrated. I tried out to go to the state. We used to have in the schools, the different levels. You compete for a local championship in music, and then you'd move on to like a regional competition, and then eventually you'd go up to state, and that was kind of like the big goal, right? Well, I remember this one year I was 7th, or I must have been 8th grade, maybe 7th or 8th grade, one of those 2 years, and I just was struggling with this one concept. It was a musical concept. It was an advanced timing, so I don't want to get too technical, but it was an advanced concept of how to know where you're at when you're playing your music. And for whatever reason, it just didn't click. And so I applied to, or I did my audition to go to the regionals for this competition. And up until that particular moment, music seemed to be pretty easy. And I was really, not, I guess as a young girl, mortified. I was really bummed, however you want to say it, because I did not get to advance. I didn't score well enough to move forward. So here I had tried, I had applied, and but I didn't succeed. Okay, I didn't succeed. I had the vision for it, I had the passion for it, I was moving into my purpose, but I failed. Okay, I failed at moving forward. And I remember with that, I was embarrassed about it, and I didn't want to really tell anybody. And I struggled with this internal decision that, do I keep playing? Because here I had teachers, I had mentors, I had my parents, everybody had invested their time and their money into supporting me, and I wasn't even good enough. We knew I was one of the better students in school, but I wasn't good enough to get into the regional competition because I was stuck. I couldn't get beyond this one musical concept. Okay, so why is this important? Because I was ready to quit. That's why. And God had a different plan. My mom, even though my mom is a very tough love mom, this was one of those times my mom made a tough love decision, and I'm really thankful she did it. So I had the vision, the plan, the passion. My mom basically said, Deb, if you're going to quit at this point, then you have to go tell your teachers. You have to go tell the teachers, the ones who've been supporting you, that you're going to quit. So whether you want to call it, she guilted me into it or whatever, I could not do that. What my mom really did is she set some boundaries of accountability, right? I had to take personal accountability and responsibility for what I was taking care of or wasn't taking care of. And so I did not have the heart, I just didn't have it in me to tell my teachers and my private teacher that I was going to quit. Instead, what it did is I had to be transparent. And especially with my private teacher, I expressed my feelings and my frustration. And my teacher, again, God covered in this space, my teacher was able to explain this musical concept that I was struggling with a little differently. And all of a sudden it clicked. Okay. So in this example so far, as you're tracking with me, I want you to think about something that you've been working on. Maybe there's things that you have skills in that you'd reached a certain point and you struggled and you didn't accomplish what you thought you were going to. Maybe you felt like a failure too. You felt like you stumbled. And my question to you is, did you give up or did you move on? Did you get beyond it? Hopefully you've moved beyond it. If you gave up, I will share with you, it's never too late to go back and pick up where you left off, because you can always advance quickly, and that's a different subject for a different day. So let me move you forward for a minute. Is this all tracking so far? Give me a little thumbs up, okay? So that was the beginning. So move forward. So I said, I think I was at the end of junior high. Now I went into high school. So into high school, that was it was a very interesting situation going into being a freshman in high school. And this is where I met the one teacher. I've had some amazing teachers, but this was the first teacher that had the biggest influence on my whole life and how I think about things. And one of the elements about him is that he really, well, not only did he care as a teacher, but during my freshman year, I allowed myself to get distracted. And I didn't realize I was getting distracted, but I was. I had friends, we were having fun, I'm meeting new friends. My grades were kind of slipping a little bit. I used to be a straight A student. Learning was easy, I loved learning. But I allowed myself to get distracted. And the one thing that this teacher did, there's two things. First of all, he called me out on it. He called me out and said, what are you doing? You have potential and you're letting yourself, you're throwing it away. Okay, I won't go into the whole conversation, but that was another ping to the heart, right? There was somebody in my life that saw potential. They saw my skills, they saw my leadership, and they saw that I wasn't applying myself. So there are times where you may need to be that person supporting another, or maybe you have somebody in your life that is kind of pinging on your heart a little bit, letting you know that you've got these skills, you've got this potential, but you're allowing yourself to get distracted, right? And you're being called. Every day there's areas that you need to step up and perform. So this is one of those moments, like my mom did, of self-accountability. And I'm putting myself in this space too, right? Because there's always room to improve. But where is it in your life that maybe you need some better improvement, that you're kind of allowing yourself to get distracted? So he called me out on that. But then the other part is I'm the one that had to step up to the plate, and I had to improve. I chose to improve. So the next thing that he taught me, and this is a pivotal insight for you, when it comes to performance, it's not just good enough. In the world of music, there's a saying. It says, "Practice makes perfect." Well, what my teacher shared is it's not enough. Practice makes perfect, but you can practice with errors. You can practice and build bad habits. You can practice in a way that actually holds you back. So he had a statement which was, perfect practice leads to perfect performance. So let me clarify that again. Perfect practice leads to perfect performance. So why is that important, and what does that mean? So when you are gaining skills, when you're gaining skills in an area of your life, especially if you're in a role of leadership, you're leading in business, you're leading your client, you're leading yourself, you're leading a child, you're leading peers, coworkers, family, whatever it is. Sometimes if we just stay doing the same thing the same way, expecting a different result, we're not going to get it. Sometimes we have to dig in a little bit deeper with the discipline and the focus and the commitment to behind closed doors. Practice and practice and practice and practice and practice with repetition. You practice a skill set so much that when you're done in the space of practicing, that you can execute the fundamentals flawlessly, Hi, Julie. Thanks for joining us. So that you can practice and execute the fundamentals flawlessly. And then just when you think you've got it perfected, change your environment just a little bit, because there's this place when you are in leadership, again, leading yourself first, there's this space and place where when we tend to practice whatever our skills are, right? It could be communication, it could be sales, whatever it is, that we have an environment around us. And here's where there's a real thin line of good enough. Sometimes it's good enough, but every now and then you have to slip into a role of excellence. So when you practice, you have perfect practice, what you're doing is you're actually going to move from keeping your knowledge base and your operational center external to where it's internal. So you want to slide your skills so it's so ingrained in you that no matter what shows up when you have to perform, that you will not get distracted. So let me explain that differently. For speakers, if you are a professional speaker, or if you have to do a sales presentation, there's usually a flow to what you're going to say. There's the start, the middle, the end. And many people who speak for a living, we write out our presentations. People who are doing sales, you should have a sales script. If you don't, see me, I'll help you so you can craft a comfortable conversation that converts. But you want to, so the point is that we can memorize, right? You can memorize something, and that's external. However, there's another word called retemorize. So it's like you retain the knowledge inside, so that no matter what, if you get distracted by the phone, or you get distracted by the kid, or you get distracted by a loud sound outside, that if you're in the middle of executing what it is that you're being tasked to do, you're performing in that moment, that if there is a distraction, the knowledge base is so internal and you're so in flow that you will not get distracted. You can just pick back up, you can rearrange, and you can move forward. Okay, so there's a couple of key points here I want to share in today's episode. Number one, perfect practice makes perfect performance. Number two, practice the fundamentals so you can execute them flawlessly. Number three, go from memorizing to retemorizing. And there's multiple levels of application for that. And then here's a bonus one. So this bonus one, which is really interesting, it has to, I'm gonna move you forward in a little bit of my music life. So that very same teacher, that moment when he called me out, I was just a freshman. And then one of the things that happened, I took so much to heart what he talked about, and he was reaching out to mentor me and coach me and work with me to help me improve my skills as a musician. I accelerated much more quickly. In fact, when I was in school, I grew to become pretty much the best musician that we had, or one of the top musicians that we had. And in certain cases, let's go back to the music competition that we used to do and go to state. I had reached to the point where my music capacity was above. I wanted to do duets and quartets and things like that, and I had nobody to play with. My skill sets were just too advanced. So my teacher had gotten a little innovative, and I was allowed to go to state, and I placed in first in state with peers. He found peers that were of my equal. But one of the other things he did, which was incredible, and it was a total surprise to me, and it left a forever mark in my understanding of leadership and performance. And what it was is that, once again, God kind of set something up unbeknownst to me. My senior year of high school, I was chosen. There was one of 100 students who are chosen every 3 years to be flown up to Washington, D.C. for something called the John Philip Sousa National Honors Band. Now, again, I knew nothing of this. It was a total surprise. My teacher had juried me and submitted me, because you had to jury in and be auditioned. So hundreds and hundreds of kids are being applied for, only 100 are selected. So I was flown out to Washington, D.C., and that was a thrill. But what was really interesting, and the learning lesson I want to share with you, the perspective I want to give you here, is that at that point in time, I had taken my passion and my purpose so seriously to perform with excellence all the time, to perform in a peak level. So it was enjoyable for me. It was enjoyable for those who would hear me perform. That before finding out about this award, I was actually playing in school about 3 hours a day, and then I would go home and practice 2 to 4 hours. So anywhere from 5 to 7 hours a day, I was practicing. That's a lot of playing of music in a day. When I got up to Washington, D.C., it was a whole new level. And so here's where there's the learning moment for you. When we got to Washington, D.C., we had less than 7 days. You had 100 people of diversity that needed to come together, become a fully functioning band, because we actually put on 3 different shows. We put on a show with the Marine, it was the Marine Corps Band, the Marine Corps Honors Band. I can't remember all of them. But anyways, it was an amazing event. And what it took for us to do that in that short amount of time is that I went from practicing 5 to 7 hours a day to, at minimal, I was practicing and playing. In group performance, we played 3-hour blocks 3 times a day. So the whole band came together and we were playing for 9 hours a day. That's a lot of music, but that wasn't enough. We had to perform at such a high level that it required the discipline to go back after 9 hours of practice to go practice more. So I remember tracking at that point in time, I was literally playing 13, 14 hours a day. For, granted, it was a short period, but that's what I want to share with you, is that sometimes when you're being called into excellence, you're being called forward into that next level up. Here's where there's a fine line when it comes to good and great and opportunities. When you're opening up opportunities, is that it takes discipline. It takes a high discipline to eliminate the distractions from your life. It takes a lot of discipline to look in the mirror and be accountable to what you're being called to do. And it does take discipline to sometimes also let your friends and family know that, look, guys, I love you, but I can't be with you today. I have to take care of this. Because if you want the reward for your leadership, you want the reward for your skill sets, you want the reward for the goodness in the life that you're striving for, you have to be willing to, I don't want to say sacrifice, but reprioritize what you're doing, and then lean in and dig into it, so that when you are doing the details to hone your skills, hone your heart, hone your knowledge, that it is so ingrained in you that no longer is it work, no longer is it coming from the top. It just, what you're doing, the heart of who you are is able to ooze out, and it's going to resonate with the people around you. So I hope that that gives you some interesting visuals, and I encourage you to consider what is one area in your life or your business right now that you've been striving to achieve another level of excellence. You've been trying to move into another level of goodness, or maybe it's something that there's an obstacle that you're trying to get behind and get beyond. Take a look. Sometimes we have to take a little step back and go back to the fundamentals and go and reapply the fundamentals with excellence. And the longer you do that, the more you do it, all of a sudden, the better it is that you'll become. And along your journey in leadership, remember this. Think about world global musicians. They too still practice. And one of the things that they practice most often is the fundamentals. So with that, my friend, thanks for being here. I appreciate you investing part of your day. Remember, live in your power, live in your peace, rock on, and know that you're loved. Okay, bye.